Welcome to the Blind Apex Podcast, where amateur club racers tune in to get faster.
I'm your host, Con Jonturk, and on this episode of the Blind Apex Podcast, we're talking about fuel systems, and I know just enough about them to upset my tuner. So, joining me, part-time wrench spinner, drag junkie, full-time automotive enthusiast, passionate educator of fuel systems and fuel system design, founder and president of DeatschWerks, David Deatsch. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Con. I'm excited to be here. I'm a fan of the podcast. My son actually turned me on to it, who's, I think, listened to every episode.
Okay.
I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. I was going to ask you how you found the podcast, so I will have to ask your son how he found it. Just I did a lot of
anything racing. He finds it, and he listens to a lot of podcasts. On racing.
Awesome. Yeah. Because I can't remember the gentleman that reached out, but in the email it said you listened and were a fan, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So, awesome. Well, welcome to the show again. Let's get your background a little. What drives your car passion? How did you start DeatschWerks? You know, what's the company into? Let's get that background so we can set you up as the expert, because I'm definitely not.
I like a lot of guys in this industry, the business was born out of a passion, born out of a hobby, a side hustle that turned more profitable and a more exciting opportunity than the day job. So that's how DeatschWerks was kind of born. Going back a little bit further, I just had a inquisitive mind on all things mechanical. So that was really handed to me by my dad, not because he was an engineer or because he was mechanically minded, but more because he wasn't at all. So any piece of furniture that needed to be put together or anything that broke is just like, Dave, can you go fix that? So that's kind of a trial by error, building of the passion on just how things work. And cars is just a great outlet for that. So I wasn't really a car guy until college, maybe even shortly after getting out of college, when I actually had two nickels I could rub together and buy something remotely interesting. But once I got into cars, it just fueled that passion for learning all the different systems and how things worked. The hobby was, at that time, I was a 240SX guy, did an SR20 swap, did a turbo upgrade, and was needing a fuel system. Fuel injectors at that time, it was basically universal RC engineering injectors. That's really all there was.
And what year was that?
To make what's that?
Around what year was that?
That was around, very late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay. Yeah.
So just as a guy with very limited funds and needing more fuel, started tinkering, looking at fuel injectors, actually modified my fuel injectors to flow more fuel. And that's how things started. Things are obviously much different today, but I was going around to junkyards pulling fuel rails and from Nissans, modifying fuel injectors, trying to get some that flowed the same and work in my car. So I kind of developed a rudimentary process of doing that, and it worked. I flow tested the injectors. That was a big part of the success, and didn't blow my car up, which was nice.
That's always helpful.
And did it for a couple of friends, and it worked. And just kind of a very grassroots grew from there. I started selling on the forums and exchanging knowledge on the forums about fuel injectors and fuel systems, and just kept getting more inquiries on, hey, can you modify this injector? Can you modify this injector? And so branched out to Subaru, and then Honda, and eventually domestic stuff, and along the way, honing processes. And, now things are very different. We are a partner with Bosch in automotive aftermarket, and they make most of our injectors for us. So we're not modifying fuel injectors anymore, but that's the roots.
Yeah. When there's a hole in the market, it just gets filled, right? And generally speaking, it seems like your story, it starts in a garage, and it starts with tinkering and, lots of trips to pick and pull and trying to find stuff that you need and stuff you can get your hands on cheap, so you can refine your processes and do things different, the
beauty, I think, of the reason it really caught on was the simplicity of it. Like, and that mindset has stayed with the company. So instead of taking a RC Engineering fuel injector that's top feed and trying to fit in a side feed car, a car that has side feed injectors, you have to do fuel rail, you have to do new O-rings, you have to do electrical connectors, you have to figure out how it's going to mate to the manifold. It's like the cost of the injector is like maybe half of what you're actually going to be spending to make them work. When you start with the OE injector, everything works. The coil is matched and compatible with the ECU. The electrical connector works. It fits the fuel rail. All you're changing is the flow rate. So that's, I think, what really caught on is the simplicity of it. And that ease of use mindset has really stuck with the company through the years. So that was like 20 years. We're having our 20th anniversary this year. So that was 20 years ago. But the idea of making fuel systems easy has been a recurring theme in our company.
Making, for me especially, I'm colorblind. So when I look at injectors and I'm like, I have to rewire this, repin it, I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, people hate wiring.
Yeah, I mean, having a race car, I'm forced to deal with it more often than I want to. But I was happy not to burn down my race car last night when I redid my rain light for no good reason. I mean, the rules change. I had to do it, but
wiring. I think wiring is the one thing that no car guy is passionate about.
That's a rabbit hole for me, because I really want to clean the wiring up in my car. Like, I'm really passionate. I want it done. I don't want to do it, but I want it done.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, everyone likes a tucked harness and, deleting all those things you don't need, but doing it is, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just trying to optimize things. I'm trying to optimize how many wires I have, how easy can I get access to these things. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later with some of the fuel systems, because for the longest time, the new car that I built wasn't allowed to have a fuel system upgrade at all. And at the end of last year, we were allowed. They changed the rules in my class. Okay. So the restricted prep car can now have fuel rail, injectors, pump. Before, everything had to, if it wasn't in the repair manual, you couldn't use it. So, gotcha. So things changed for me. And now I'm like, okay, do I need it? I'm not sure, so we'll talk about that. What's your primary business? Like, what cars are you dealing with the most? What type of drivers are you dealing with the most these days?
So that's the interesting thing about our business is we are niche in the fact that we only do fuel systems, but within fuel systems, we do everything. Okay. So we are really unique. The only company in the industry that really does fuel injectors, fuel pumps, regulators, rails, lines and fittings, surge tanks, filtration. So we're soup to nuts on the fuel system. And that gives us a lot of insight into how all the components work together. We really service and, our biggest application is probably Honda or Mustangs, just because there's so many of them and it's such a popular platform. Right. We do imports. We start out in the imports in Sport Compact, but we really are diverse and we do a lot of LSs, a lot of Mustangs, a lot of Hondas, a lot of Subarus, a lot of Nissans, Toyotas. So we do everything within the fuel systems. And then on the racing side, we do lots of different types of racing. We are starting off with Formula SAE. So we sponsor Formula SAE cars throughout the country. We're one of the actual parts providers through Formula SAE, so we can help those students learn and be successful with their fuel systems. We've been involved in Indy Lights. So when Life Engines had the engine contract with Indy Lights, we did that fuel injector. We focus on grassroots racing, a lot of grid life, autocross, time attack, a lot of drift, NMRA. We're involved with NMRA on Mustang drag racing. So not typically high-end stuff, but grassroots. Really, the people that like in your podcast audience are our target customers, really.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I've looked at your website. You guys offer a lot of good tips, a lot of good information, which I appreciate because I needed to go down a little path of learning to make sure I could ask the right types of questions. The most basic question I would like to ask is, because most of the guys I race with are in clapped out 30, 40-year-old Hondas.
Yeah. Most of our customers are too.
I mean, yeah.
Those are the best race cars. Is something older, simple, and
easy to write off.
It's not going to break the bank if you put it into a wall.
My truck does this easily because it's newer, right? But switching from pump gas to E85, some people call E85 pump gas. I know that they can.
Yeah.
When we're working with the older generations, what are some of those considerations that we need to take in? And we may even need to take it in on some of the newer cars, because I think my Honda's only rated for like an E80. So
yeah,
they don't want 85 in it without something being changed. So what would we have to change or be more concerned about switching to an E85 fuel?
So what year is your car?
2007.
Okay. Yours will be fine. It might only be rated for E80 or a lower content of ethanol from the factory, but cars past 2000. So there was cars, I don't remember the exact year cutoff, but it was in the late 90s. They really were not made for any ethanol compatibility. If you're working on an old car, you're going to have to upgrade quite a few things. Sometimes even the fuel rail. Well, on some applications, the fuel rails are like non-anodized aluminum. That's not good for 85. All the rubber lines are not compatible with ethanol. Those tanks will have sludge and deposits that will, once you convert to E85, will all get emulsified and filtered through your fuel system, and it can cause all sorts of problems. So on a older car, pre-95-ish, you really need to look at the whole fuel system and probably replumb it if you really want to make sure you're not going to have significant issues. On newer cars, you can do a lot less.
Okay.
There's a whole with E85. conversions from gasoline cars to making them run at E85, I like to look at it as the 4 C's is what I call it. When you go, if you're a married man, you've gone shopping for a diamond, and it's like the cut, clarity, carats. I don't know what those 4 C's are, but there's like the color. Yes, that's the one. You must have a happy wife. You buy her nice diamonds.
She's happy. I don't know.
But the 4 C's, the 4 C's of E85 are capacity, compatibility, control, and consistency. So if you think about those 4 factors while you're building your fuel system, you'll be in pretty good shape. So going through those, kind of point by point, capacity is E85 is less energy density, per gallon of fuel. So you're going to need 30 to 35% more fuel to make the same amount of power.
Right.
That usually means upgrading your pump and usually your injectors. Some, different platforms will have different headroom on fuel injectors, but usually you're going to needing to upgrade your fuel injectors and pump to get that capacity that you need.
Okay.
The next C being compatibility. That's the materials that the components are made out of. The things that are, I'd say it's easy to find a list of materials online that are compatible, but like the things that are really not compatible would be raw aluminum, brass, natural rubber. Those are some of the things you really want to stay away from. The things that are very much compatible would be like stainless steel, PTFE. So PTFE lines are great. For lower concentrations of ethanol, CPE is a good synthetic rubber that works really good. We have both on our DeatschWerks fuel lines. We have both CPE and PTFE, and we rate our CPE rubber line up to E85. If you want to run anything, E100, or if you're running E85 and strictly E85, then PTFE is probably a good idea too.
Yeah.
So those are like there's materials you want to stay away from, and materials that you're really good at with if you use in your fuel system for E85. So that covers the compatibility. Then there's the consistency. That's all about the consistency of the fuel. The great thing about E85 is it's cheap race gas, right? So it has high octane. It really cools your combustion charge. So it sucks a lot of heat out of your combustion. The air that's pulling into your cylinders. So the cooling charge, the burn rate, and the octane are 3 great things about E85. The bad things about E85 is it's corrosive, which means it wears out fuel pumps. Especially brushed fuel pumps. You have this brush and this commutator, and it highly accelerates the wear of the brush and the commutator. So you want to make sure you're using a fuel pump with a carbon commutator. Older commutators and non-performance commutators are usually made out of brass, and that's like one of the worst things to use. Right. It'll work. It'll just have a much shorter lifespan in the E85.
Okay.
And then the E85 itself is also hygroscopic. So that means it's going to draw water from the air and from the atmosphere. So if you're in a humid environment, or if the gas station you're getting E85 from is not mixing it right or storing it by best practices, you can have water in your fuel much easier than you can with gasoline.
Okay.
So the consistency part is choosing either race E85, race fuel E85, which is obviously more expensive, but it's very consistent. It won't have water in it. It'll always be 85% ethanol. It will be mixed with higher quality gasolines. But it's also not available at the pump. So you lose that huge convenience factor, and it costs, $10 or more a gallon versus $2 or $3 a gallon. So most people are going to be running pump E85. It's just much easier, much cheaper. And then you have to just make sure you're getting it from a good gas station. You can test it before you put it in when you're at the pump. Mm-hmm. There's those little test tubes. You put a little bit of water in there, put a little bit of the E85 in there, shake it up. It'll tell you what your true ethanol content is. Or the best thing is what I like to do. The personal cars that I've built, I've had dedicated E85 cars and I've had flex fuel cars. Mm-hmm. Flex fuel makes your life so much easier. Yeah. So you don't have to worry about seasonality. You can still go get the good stuff if you're going, on a track event or something. Make sure you're, getting true E85. But the way the flex fuel works is you'll have a sensor that you put in line, and sometimes it can be integrated into like a stock ECU, like on GMs. All ECUs have flex fuel capabilities. Mm-hmm. So you just have to wire it in and turn on those maps, and then you have flex fuel. And you can use something like HP Tuners. That's just a flash tuning program. Other applications aren't so easy. And you'd have to maybe run a standalone if you want to run flex fuel. Honestly, I'm not sure with Hondas. I think Hondata has some flex fuel capability. I'm not sure if it's natively built into the ECUs.
Well, for all the competitors of mine that are listening, I'm not looking to run corn liquor in my car. I was just asking a question because it's illegal in my class. But
okay.
We have friends that run in classes that use E85, or there's time trial guys that run E85. Would I love it to cool down, my engine a little more? Sure, but it's not legal, so I'm not using it. But there's considerations people need to make when they go to upgrade their fuel system. Are you going to be in that class forever? Do you want a little more flexibility? What do you need to look at?
It's a very polarizing topic. There's people either seem to love it or hate it. And I think that's based on maybe their understandings of how to use it and the best practices. And then also their, maybe their past experiences. If you've had a bad experience with it, it will feel like it's not worth it. So the last C is control.
Okay.
So that's controlling the content of ethanol. And that's where the flex fuel is great, because you don't have to control the content of ethanol. The control is just done through the ECU and through the flex fuel sensor automatically. If you want to manually control it, that's where you're testing it at the pump to make sure you have the right content of E85 for your tune. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people will carry around E100 so they can mix it with, if they get their pump gas and it's, only 60%, they can do some quick side of the road math and add the right amount of pure ethanol to bring it up to what they need.
I just hope they're using really good containers, because I wouldn't want to drive around with E100. But
yeah, I would not suggest people do that, but I know it does happen.
Look, I've been to the gas station where the guys are pouring it into glass jars. So,
right.
Or, big glass carboys. I'm like, guys, first off, that carboy can break just from you picking it up. And, it's already 20 pounds, and then you're going to throw all that fuel in there, and then you're going to put it in the back of your pickup truck and bounce down the road. I don't want anything to do with
that. Right. Yeah. So recipe for disaster.
Yeah, so things are done all over the place and they do weird things everywhere. But and heck, half the time they're probably
85 can be great.
Yeah,
85 can be great if you educate yourself and plan out your system accordingly. And if you can do flex fuel, it makes E85 use way easier.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can use it and you plan for it, should be good to go. So
yeah,
that's a big, easy button to go, oh, I'm switching to E85. I need to upgrade my fuel system. What are some other indicators that it's time to upgrade your fuel system?
Unlike maybe some other systems in the car, the OE system's great. It works. It's reliable. I suggest not upgrading your fuel system unless you need to. That usually comes with capacity. So most of our customers are running forced induction, and they just have to have more fuel. Mm-hmm. If you're a competitive racer, you want to make sure everything's optimized. So some upgrades and some best practices to optimize your fuel system would be annually getting your fuel injectors flow tested, changing your filter. There's not a whole lot you have to do if it's stock level horsepower to optimize your fuel system. Probably the biggest thing for your audience, people that are track junkies, competitively or just doing high speed touring, is fuel slosh. Mm-hmm. That is something that is highly variable on cars and what's needed, but you don't have to make any extra power to experience fuel starvation at even half a tank. So that's a topic I think that would be very helpful for your audience to understand fuel slosh control.
Well, let's talk about it. I know I had my first race car was a 2000 EM1 Honda Civic, and you could run it very low on fuel before it would starve.
Yeah.
Other competitors in basically the same car couldn't run it that low.
Yeah.
And
so the late model cars are much better with fuel slosh because they have integrated surge buckets with the OE module. So they use a Venturi system that will suck fuel either from a saddle tank if it's a rear-wheel drive vehicle, or will just suck fuel from the tank to introduce fresh fuel into a bucket, a surge bucket. So even when you're at an eighth of a tank, all the fuel is constantly being scavenged from the different parts of the fuel tank and being put into that bucket. So the pump itself is always surrounded with fuel. So that's why a lot of modern cars don't have those issues.
Okay.
But that in the again around 2000, 2005 is where OE started integrating those buckets, those surge buckets into the fuel pump modules. It became pretty commonplace. Now those aren't going to be perfect for like real high G cornering and real low tank conditions. There's some other things you can do to control slosh. The four popular things to control slosh would be a bucket, like I just talked about, a baffled fuel tank, a fuel cell foam, or a surge tank. A surge tank is more complicated, but probably the most robust anti-slosh system. But you're putting a small reservoir of fuel into your, outside of your fuel tank to run a surge tank, and plumbing it is critical. Having the calculations so that so that your fuel consumption is the engine. You're going to have enough fuel capacity in that surge tank. That's important. So they're a little bit more complicated, but they're the most foolproof and most reliable method of controlling fuel slosh.
Yeah, I don't want to call it a gimmick because I think it works, but like Hydromat,
Hydromat is.
It's one thing people use, that people talk about it, and then they go, well, it's $200. And I'm like, well, you can either run more fuel or you pay $200 to make sure, always run topped off, which means you have to weight manage the rest of the car, or you spend the $200 on the mat. That's easy for us because we're front wheel drive cars. So if you can get it to fit in there, we don't have good baffles in ours. If you can get it to fit in there just right, you won't have a problem. But, when you're talking rear wheel drive with the saddle tanks and all that stuff, it will work, but it won't be optimal.
We've done some testing with Hydromat. When it first came out, I was very intrigued.
Right.
We've had kind of hit and miss results with it. Most in-tank fuel pumps are centrifugal pumps. So it's a turbine impeller, and it has to be submerged in fuel. It doesn't have any suction. It doesn't have, it won't pull fuel through. The Hydromat works best with a positive displacement pump that is pulling the fuel through. And most OE fuel pumps are not positive displacement. So if you're going to be running a Hydromat, I'd suggest running a positive displacement pump. The other issue with Hydromat, other than the cost and the difficulty to install, is it will increase your current draw on your pump. So you're basically having to, you've seen those, it's like a huge fuel sock, right? And you're having to suck in the fuel from that huge surface area. And that's just a bigger draw on your fuel pump. So it's going to pull more current, and it's going to limit the output of the fuel, of the fuel flow coming out of your pump, because it's having to suck it through the Hydromat.
That is something I definitely didn't even think about, but you're right. I mean, it's a big, for lack of a better word, like a big towel in there that gets scavenged from.
Right.
So you're pulling from a much larger area. And so it's going to have to pull more, which causes more amp use. So
I think success with the Hydromat is probably application specific. So if your buddy's running it and he likes it and it works great, and you've got the same, year, make, and model, or the same fuel pump that you're using, then it'll probably work good for you too. But we've had hit and miss results with it.
And you said most OEMs are running centrifugal pumps, and it's not going to work optimally that way. So
that's been what our experience.
Yeah. So you're likely going to end up changing your pump already. So the options might be in a better direction. If you're spending $200 on the mat plus a pump, like, there's probably a better solution.
Right.
So, maybe a more reliable solution. So I wanted to get into how we can maximize the reliability of our fuel systems. I know you talked about getting the injectors looked at once a year, cleaning your fuel, your fuel filter. And I do want to get to the fuel filter eventually, because I have a lot of questions about that. Maybe not a lot, but multiple. What else can we do to ensure reliability?
At stock power levels, keeping everything clean, keeping your gasoline good. A lot of these race cars, they sit all winter. Well, make sure if they're going to sit that you put some good gas in it. You fill the tank. You don't want to store your vehicle with E85 or methanol. And methanol, we suggest pickling your fuel system after every race. And that's really best practices for methanol. most of your customers or your audience are probably not running methanol, but they might be running E85. And with E85, you just don't want to sit for a month. So on the off season, you'll want to run gasoline through your system. Keep your tank full of gas. That will limit the amount of moisture that gets into your tank, because it just sucks it through the air. So the more you just keep that tank full. If you can afford it, it's always a good idea to pull your injectors and have them serviced, or at least flow tested. Some places will flow test your injectors and not service them. And if you have a good balanced set of injectors, you don't need to service them, at least not every year. But if they've sat in a race car that doesn't get a lot of engine hours on it, sludge can build up on the orifice, the tip of the injector, and flow rates can be off, and you can lose an engine. It's cheap insurance to get them flow tested and checked out.
It's really not that expensive. I do it every year, so mostly because I'm still on OE injectors. I drain my gas in the wintertime, so I'm empty. I'm aired out. Like my garage smells like fuel for a couple days.
Right. That's probably fine also. But you don't want to be in that in between where it's got bad gas in the system, and lots of air, because you drain the tank all the way. So when you're filling it up, you're at the beginning of the next season, you're filling it up with fresh fuel.
Right.
But if you're, that's probably even better than keeping it full of fuel. But I don't think a lot of people do that. So at least keep it full of fuel, and good fuel, and not E85 all winter, because you'll come out to a car that's not going to start, and then it's going to you've contaminated your fuel system with all sorts of stuff by then.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, and we'll talk more about filters. If you want to talk about filters, just changing your filter, or washing your filters, routinely. It doesn't take a lot. All of our filters that we sell are all stainless steel elements, so they're reusable. You just take them out. The best thing you can do is ultrasonically clean them and backflush them. But in practicality, just rinsing them out. Obviously, you want to let them dry. You don't want to introduce water into the fuel system, but rinsing them out from the inside out will clean them up pretty good.
Okay. My question was size of the filter. So there's two sizes, right? So the overall size, I would assume the smaller that filter, it's probably a combination. The smaller the filter, the more likely you need to either replace it or clean it. Some of them aren't serviceable. And then
exactly, yeah.
And then the micron size,
right?
Lower takes out more particulates, right? Thanks COVID, we learned something. But
yeah,
I did anyway, sort of. But at the same time, can it affect impact flow rate through that filter? And then I would also think, super small micron filters, like a 1 micron filter, you're going to want to clean more often. I would assume.
Right. So there's actually micron recommendations. We'll handle the micron question first.
Okay.
So you're putting the filter before the component that you're wanting to protect. Typically, you have two components you're wanting to protect in your fuel system. One is the fuel pump, and one is the fuel injector. So you'll have two different filters in your system, one before the pump and one before the injectors. Now, the one before the pump is usually, especially for in-tank pumps, it's just that little filter sock on the end of your pump. A pump is a not a super precise component in relation to a fuel injector. So you use a much larger pore size. You don't need to overfilter. Overfiltering is not a good idea. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't protect anything better. You just want to right size your micron rating. So the typical recommendations for what micron filter is suggested for a fuel pump is 100 to 200 microns. That's all you need before your fuel pump.
Okay.
Then before you'll see the typical pore sizes available would be 100 to 200 for the pump, 40, 10, and 5. So it's all about the precision of the component you're wanting to protect. So the 40 micron filters are made for carbureted systems. Mm-hmm. The 10 micron filters are made for EFI systems, port fuel injection. And the 5 micron filters are for direct injection injectors.
Okay.
So if you just think of it from order of the least precise component to the most precise component, and you just go up and go down in pore size to protect the more precise components.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
A lot of people will use a 40. This is a trend I was trying to spell is they say, well, if you're going to run 85, run a 40 micron filter so your filter doesn't clog. Don't do that. Run a 10 micron filter and clean it more frequently. Yeah. When you first convert to E85, you will clog your filters. Right. But if you're clogging your filter, that means it's doing its job. So don't put in a higher pore size so you don't have to change your filters. Just clean your filters more often. Eventually you will scrub all those contaminants out of your fuel system and you won't have to change your filters often.
Yeah.
But I really don't like it when people are putting 40 micron filters in E85 cars just so they don't have to change the filters often.
Yeah, that defeats the purpose of the filter. But
yeah. And everything 40 micron less is going to deposit on your fuel injector, and those are a lot more expensive to replace.
For sure.
Than a filter.
For sure. So, okay, let's talk about how should we be sizing our fuel pumps? You talked a little bit about it needing 30, 35, maybe 40% more if you're going to go E85. But in general, how do we know we need more fuel pump?
There are calculators. So one, there's the quick and dirty is use our online calculators. At our website, we've got calculators for fuel pump sizing, for fuel injector sizing, all that stuff. And it's all based on your BSFC and your horsepower and you base your fuel consumption. Okay. Recommendations from trusted engine builders and tuners are also good. A Subaru is going to take a lot more fuel, or a rotary is going to take a lot more fuel than a Honda. Hondas are very efficient. That really does translate to fuel consumption and how big of a pump you need to make your power goals. You also want to make sure you right size your pump. So you don't want a bigger pump than you need. Okay. That's introducing, you're trying to overbuild your fuel system by putting in a bigger pump than you need. Mm-hmm. But it's really introducing more problems. You do want headroom, 10, 15, 20% of headroom on your fuel pump. So you definitely don't want to undersize. You want a little bit of extra capacity, but you don't want twice the fuel pump that you need, because when you're sitting at idle or you're off throttle, you have a return fuel system, you're just heating up your fuel, and each time it's going through the engine bay and routing back to the tank through the by the exhaust or something like that. It just heats up your fuel. It creates a lot of current draw on your electrical system. Mm-hmm. If you need to run big pumps to support a lot of power, Pulse width modulation or staging multiple pumps is the best practice.
Okay. I always was like, oh, just put a big one in there. Who cares? Right. But you make some good points that in a return system, you're cycling it through the engine bay, you're cycling it through the pump itself more often. And you do have more draw in your system. So that makes sense. But
yes, if you're running a, 2 or 3 pumps, staging them is a easy, cheap way, because until you're in boost, you're not going to need that second or third pump. So just a Hob switch, something like that, or RPM switch to activate that second and third pump when you get into boost is a good, easy way to control multiple pumps. Or if you have a big pump, pulse width modulation that's definitely the best way to go.
Okay. So my next question, because we had some debates about this in the paddock a couple times, but how do we size our fuel injectors outside of your tuner says we need more injector?
Right.
How do I know I need more?
You'll need more when you start losing fuel pressure under full throttle, under full load conditions. Hondas, they will basically, as the fuel pressure goes down, they have sensors that are monitoring fuel pressure, and they're just holding the injectors open longer. So they'll compensate and they'll save you to a point. That's why, a lot of Hondas will run regulators without a manifold reference, because the stock ECU will just compensate. It has the sensors, it'll compensate. But when you are out of fuel pump, your fuel pressure will drop under high load conditions. But you were asking about fuel injectors.
Yeah.
Sorry. So how do you know when you need more fuel injector?
Right.
That would also be looking at your data logs, looking at your injector duty cycle. You want to stay away from, it depends on the type of injector you're using as to what I would suggest your maximum duty cycle should be. The old rule of thumb was 80%. So if you have injectors that are, EV1 injectors, the old Bosch metal-bodied fat injectors, those, or like the Honda OBD1 injectors,
right.
That were metal-bodied, any of those older technology injectors, 80% duty cycle is a good rule of thumb, because that's when the injector is going to stop responding in a linear fashion, and they'll start sticking open. Modern, like a Bosch EV14 injector, those can go past 90% duty cycle, even up to like 95% duty cycle, and still be very linear.
Okay.
So as your injector reaches maximum duty cycle, there'll be float. The injector won't close all the way before the next injection cycle starts. So you'll actually run a little bit rich before. So when you start running out of injector, you go a little bit rich, and then you start to go lean, because once you're static, which means the injector is just open 100% of the time, 100% duty cycle, you'll start going lean.
Okay.
Because obviously it can't be open more than 100% of the time.
Yeah, I have a more modern car. Okay, it's a 2007, so it's not the old fat, EFI setup from Honda. But I think when we were tuning, not I sit back and watch. It's I think we're at 80 or 88 or no 85 or 88%. I can't remember the exact number on my duty cycle for my injectors, and I was like, oh, it seems a little high. So I just didn't know.
Yeah, so that would be a key-in injector. and they're good injectors. They're not quite as good as a Bosch EB14, but I think you're safe.
Okay.
I think you're good. If you can watch your AFRs, and if it starts to go rich, then that means you're actually about to start running out of injector.
Okay.
It's a little counterintuitive because you go a little bit rich before you start going lean.
Okay.
But I think you're borderline, but I think you're safe.
Okay. Yeah, some guys were like, oh, I'll run up to 90, 95%. Okay, that's fine. But I was just personally, I wanted to make sure. I don't know. So, we did talk a little bit about service intervals. Now, I was perusing your website. The sizing stuff for the injector and the pump were great. I also saw the services that you provide for servicing of the pumps and stuff. What are we looking at for most people? Because I know the drag guys are pulling, a lot of fuel through their stuff more often, but we're running the cars for longer durations. So,
right.
They see a harder life for a shorter time, and then we run them maybe not as hard, but for much longer. So what kind of service intervals should we expect? Our pumps we talked about the injectors once a year. So for the pumps, and then how often should we really be looking at our fuel filters?
The pumps aren't serviceable.
Oh, okay.
So you don't need to do anything with as far as fuel pump, but if you've got an OE pump, that they are, a DC brushed pump is eventually going to wear out. It is a wear item. It has brushes and commutators that rub together, create friction. The brushes will eventually wear down. So preventive maintenance would be replacing your OE pump with a new pump. If there's any signs of it sounding funny or being inconsistent on your AFRs, or you just have to replace the OE.
Okay.
The injectors we kind of talked about, and there's so many variables on injector servicing. We get injectors in that have 200,000 miles on them and have never been serviced, and they flow great. We get injectors in that are in a late model car that had some bad gas or some contaminant in the fuel pump, and they're clogged. Right. So I don't have great recommendations on servicing, but for race cars, once a year is all that I would suggest on fuel injectors. Okay. Also realize on the fuel injector, what a fuel injector service is, it's so first we take all the injectors, we flow test them as we receive them. So that gives you your baseline of what it was. Then we remove the filters. They have little filters in the injector inlet. We replace those filters. We replace the O-rings, and we ultrasonically clean the injectors. So ultrasonics, we pulse the injectors, put them in a ultrasonic bath with these special detergents, and it cleans the internals of the injector, specifically on the injection valve, where the pintle and the pintle seat on the tip of the injector, that's the part that really gets contaminants. So we're not flow balancing. When you hear flow balancing, there's nothing that they're doing to change the flow rates other than cleaning the injectors to get them to their optimal balance and condition. Mm-hmm. The coils on the injector aren't serviceable. If you have a bad coil, you just need a new injector. When we do injector services, we do coil tests where they test impedance and inductance of the coil while it's operating. So we can not only tell if we have a bad coil, we can also tell if the coil is starting to go out based on differences in the inductance of the coil while it's operating. So that can kind of be a preventive measure, but you really just have to replace the injector at that point. The coil is the only part that isn't fixable or serviceable. Now, if you have mechanical damage on the injector, that's not something we can fix either. But it's basically cleaning the injector, replacing all the serviceable parts, and then doing a post-flow test. So after we do all that stuff, you can see what the injectors flowed before the service and then what they flowed after the service.
Okay. That makes sense to me. I get them done, but I never knew exactly what was going on. Sometimes they send me videos and stuff. So, and I'm like, oh, look.
Yeah, that's
pretty
like
pictures.
Videos like you can look at the spray pattern. You can make sure the spray pattern is proper, and you can visually look at the atomization of the spray pattern. That's another thing that's looked at.
One of the last topics I have, and it's mostly just a controversial one that people talk about. Unfortunately, well, knock on wood, this year I didn't have to do it, but I've gotten really good at removing my engine and transmission. I honestly want to switch to AND lines and fittings because, well, it's just easier for me to take apart. The factory fuel system in my car has these weird clips and stuff, and eventually I'm going to break them, So,
right.
Because I'm 100% sure Honda wasn't expecting me to remove my engine 3 times a year. So,
no, it's probably not. That's not in the routine maintenance schedule at all.
No, not at all. But people like to say that AND lines, if they break, which it's possible, you won't be able to fix it during the weekend because, well, my fuel system's not going to be repairable either. The system that I have.
Right.
So out of convenience, I wanted to just go to something where I throw a wrench on it, pop it off, and then go, right? It would make my life a little easier, especially when I drain it, because I'll prime the fuel pump after I drain the tank to clear the lines. I knew I was pulling my rail and my injectors. They were getting drained already because they were going to get serviced over the winter just to keep my system completely aired out. But what are your thoughts on going to AND lines and fittings and some of the mistakes people might make when they do it that have given them sort of, they don't have a bad reputation, but they just have this reputation of, if they break, you'll never be able to fix it at the track. So,
I haven't heard of a lot of controversy over AN lines. What we usually run into is people feeling that they need to upgrade their OE fuel lines to make X amount of power. Usually people upgrade their fuel lines when they don't need to. What you're talking about is something a little bit different, which is about reliability and ease of, connecting and disconnecting on a routine basis. AN lines are very reliable when they're assembled properly.
I think that's the biggest trick.
A big if.
Yes.
Right.
The first time I ever did
they're super easy.
Yes, they are. But the first time I did it, I wanted it to, I didn't want one little strand to come out, and I didn't, everything had to be like just right. And then when I tried to put it together, it actually didn't go together right. And they make tools for it. They make tools to help you, and you should be getting these tools. Yes, you can throw an adjustable wrench on your AND lines or your fittings and tighten them down, but it's better to have the proper tools. So it's one of those, not just the AND wrenches, but you need the assembly tool. That's what I feel like. I have one from my old car, and it works great. It makes life super easy.
They make life easier.
Yes.
Yeah. It's something that takes practice, and it's something that takes way more time than you think it will when you are doing them for the first time. Yeah. And you're always going to stab yourself in the fingers with those little stainless steel wires.
Always.
I still do that.
Always.
But once you get good at assembling them, and if it's assembled properly, it's very reliable. If it's going to leak, it usually will leak right away. So yeah, that's kind of the trick with AN lines. Also, the CPE, the rubber lines, are easier to assemble than the PTFE lines. The PTFE lines, some guys at DeatschWerks think the PTFE lines are easier to assemble than the CPE lines. I think those are people that have been assembling a lot of fuel lines. When I first assembled, when we were releasing our lines and fittings, and I was playing with them, and we were making sure everything fit right, the rubber CPE lines were way easier than the PTFE. Now that I've got experience, they're kind of tit for tat. In general, I'd say the CPE rubber lines are easier to assemble. You don't have that olive and have to peel back the sheath just precisely. But they're kind of a pain in the ass. Yeah.
Okay.
I would suggest, like, for your setup, using maybe a dry brake might be. They're expensive, but you'd only need two, one for the feed, one for the return, and it would make disconnecting your engine real fast and real clean and not lose any fuel.
Yeah, I have lots of want to do projects to make my life easier in the car. Dry brakes were absolutely on the list, but one of them was also for I have a hydraulic clutch system, so I wanted to throw one on there because disconnecting things,
right.
Getting down into the spot near the transmission, I can do it now. It's easy to do, but I've also had transmission cases wear out just from the amount of times that I've had to pull things in and out of the car before. Not this car, but they're just older. Right. They're getting older. If I don't have to remove bolts out of it, I shouldn't need to. And if I can dry brake it and not have to bleed it and not have to worry about things and just click them together, it's better for me. So,
yeah.
And then I'm trying to design a transmission cooler system for my car, and I would need AN lines for that, but the space is super tight. So, it'll be tricky, but we'll figure it out.
What size lines do you use on the transmission cooler?
I think I was going to go with 8 AN, maybe 6. Okay. One of those two. I would assume smaller is easier to snake through places, but they're more flexible.
And the PTFE lines are a smaller diameter overall than the CPE lines, because that PTF tube is very thin.
Okay.
So the OD of a Dash 8 CPE is about the same as the OD of a Dash 12 PTFE. I'm sorry, Dash 10.
Oh, okay. I was like, that's a big jump.
Yeah.
But okay.
No. So it's like one step thinner. So you'll look at a Dash 8 PTFE line, and it looks like a Dash 6 CPE line.
Okay.
We only our whole lineup of lines and fittings is tailored to fuel systems. So we're specific in that we only do fuel system sizes. We do 6, 8, and 10. But we also have a lot of specialty fittings. All of our AN hose ends are swivel. We don't even sell the non-swivels. They're just too much of a pain. They're cheaper, but I installed them once and I was like, I'm not selling these. And we have a ton of specialty fittings for fuel systems, like the dry brakes and bulkhead fittings and EFI quick connects in different sizes. So we're specific to fuel, but we have a lot of specialty stuff.
Awesome.
Within fuel. Yeah.
And that's DeatschWerks with an E, right? WERKS.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your social medias, what? I think it's
just all the regular.
Yeah.
We go by DW. So if you look at DW injectors, or
Okay.
We also own all the URLs for all the different wrong spellings of DeatschWerks. So they can figure it out.
It'll get you there. Okay.
It'll get you there. Yeah.
I think that's all I have. Do you think we missed anything that we need to cover?
No, I think that we pretty thorough review of fuel systems. If you don't have any more questions, I think we've hit everything as far as I can think of.
Awesome. Well, David, it was great to have you on the show. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll cross paths at a track sometime, or I'm planning to go to PRI this year in December. So I don't know if you guys are going to be there.
We'll definitely be at PRI. We're at PRI and see them every year. So stop by our booth for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I definitely will. Thanks again for coming on, sir.
Oh, thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun, and hopefully we educated some people. And I've gotten a lot of education from all your other podcasts. So it's good to be able to give back a little bit.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you listening. I was surprised. So.
Until next time, keep working on yourself, keep working on the car, and let's get faster.